In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this twisted headband using a 40 hook Sentro knitting machine, or you can use any comparable knitting machine with about the same amount of hooks. So let's get started. So for today's project, I'm going to be using my 40 pin Sentro, or my 40 hook Sentro knitting machine. This is actually a Sentro, not a Jammet like my other one. You're going to want to make sure that your machine is set to the T position, which stands for tube, and P stands for panel. We're not doing that today, we're doing T. There we go. I just installed this new stitch counter, row counter, I'm very excited about. I'm going to link this down in the description because it's a lot easier than the one I did on my other knitting machine. For this headband, I'm going to be using Lion Brand Heartland yarn. This is pretty much the yarn I use for most of my knitting machine projects at this point. It's just acrylic yarn. It is medium worsted weight yarn, acrylic, Oeko-Tex certified, all the good things. And this color is called Rocky Mountains. And I'm also using waste yarn to cast on. I actually have just like this yarn that's the same brand but different color from a previous project, and I'm just going to use some of this as my waste yarn. For this project, we're going to be doing waste yarn rows at the beginning and the end. I like to use a contrasting color from what I'm going to be using, so I picked pink to go with the green. That just makes it easier on your eyes later when you go to finish off the ends. We're going to go ahead and cast on with our waste yarn. So to cast on, you see this is the first peg, this black peg here, that is in the front, and that's what you want. So we're going to take our piece of waste yarn here, and I'm just going to wrap it over this hook. So it's kind of just hooked in there. And here's the short end, and I'm just going to drop that down on the inside. And now we're going to go back and forth around all the pegs. So I'm going to go behind the next one, or the hooks. I'm going to go in front of the next hook, behind the next one, in front, behind, and you're just going to keep doing that all the way around until you get back to the black one, or whatever color your first peg, your first hook is. And once you get back to the beginning, here we are. And see, I'm going behind this last hook right before the black one. So I'm just gonna bring it around here a little bit, and I'm gonna go down underneath this divider that goes between the black and the white hook. I'm gonna make sure I go under that, and I'm gonna push this one down too, just for good measure. Go under that divider, and then bring it up into the little yarn holder thingy. And then down here on the tension deal, I'm going to put it in the one closest to the machine, which is the smallest tension hole. It seems to work good with this brand of yarn if I put it in that first little hole there. So that was the cast on row. So now, see, once I go past the black, my counter is going to turn over to 1. And so that was row 1. We're going to do 5 rows all together with waste yarn. So now you're just going to crank slowly with your waste yarn. Okay, there we go. Now we're at row 10. So I'm stopping right whenever I get past this black hook here, because now we're going to switch to our main color. So I'm going to take my waste yarn out of the tensioner, and I'm just going to cut it, leaving a little bit of a tail, just so I have something to work with. And then I'm going to bring it out of the yarn holder and just make sure it's wrapped around that hook. And I'm just going to drop it there for now while I get my other yarn ready. I got to find my center pull, because that just makes life a million times easier. Unfortunately, getting the center pull out is kind of a pain. We get a little yarn barf going on here. I'm just going to stuff that back in and hope for the best. Alright, I found it finally. Now I'm going to just take this yarn and I'm going to put it right down in the yarn holder and in the tensioner, same hole. And it's going to just be between the black hook and the white hook, right in the middle there, just to the left of the black hook. And then this is important. When we go to start here, we're going to hold these two tails together and kind of pinch them so it doesn't come undone or drop a stitch right here. And I'm going to go ahead and start. Oh, first, before I continue, I'm going to clear my counter. There we go. Now we're going to be doing 95 rows for this part. So I'm just going to hold on to this yarn for a minute, get around here a little bit. And then before I continue, I'm going to tie just a little loose knot here. Not a knot, but just a little bit of like a half knot, just to hold it in place so it doesn't drop a stitch on me. Then you're just going to go ahead and start cranking. And you're going to want to be careful on the first couple rows once you changed colors. Just make sure this is good. I think it's good. And then we're just going to go for 95 rows. All right, so I'm at row 68, and you can see that my tube is kind of like dragging on the table here. So at that point, when that starts happening, I just like to roll it up just to be, you know, just to make sure everything stays cool and it doesn't get all twisted. And then, yeah, there you go. So then you just continue on. And if it starts dragging the table again, just do the same thing, just roll it up. But we're on row 68, so we're almost there. All right, we're getting down to the very end here. This is my last row, and there we go. So I'm stopping right past the black hook. I just did my 95 rows. So now we're gonna switch back to waste yarn. So I'm gonna take my yarn out of the thing, and I'm gonna cut it and leave a pretty good tail again. I just like to leave a little bit of extra just in case. And then I'm just gonna put it right in the middle, and I'm gonna make sure it's hooked around that black hook. And then I'm gonna switch back to my waste yarn and do 10 more rows, just like we did before. So again, I'm gonna put it right into the yarn slot. I'm gonna bring it down into that small tension hole. And then I'm gonna hold these two tails together pretty firmly to make sure they don't go anywhere without, you know, holding too tight. And then I'm gonna come over here and give them a little knot, or not a whole knot, a half knot, just so they don't drop a stitch or anything, because that does happen sometimes and it's a pain. So now we're gonna go ahead and do 10 rows with the waste yarn. Okay, I'm stopping right past the black hook, and I'm doing 10 rows of waste yarn at the beginning and the end. You don't have to do a whole 10, you can do 5. I just like to do 10 at the beginning because then it feels a little more like sturdy to me. I don't know, I'm just kind of weird like that. And then I just like to do the same amount at the end, but you could really just do 5 of each if you didn't want to do so much. Just throwing that out there. Okay, so I finished. I stopped right past the black hook. So again, I'm gonna leave a little bit of a tail, you know, a decent sized tail, and cut it. And now I'm just gonna throw this into the middle of the machine and make sure it's hooked around that black hook. Now we're gonna do 2 last rounds, and then it'll just fall right off your machine. Kind of got stuck on these last hooks, so I'm gonna help it out a little. There we go. All right, so now we are off the machine. So I'm gonna move this guy over here. So now what we're gonna have, once we unroll it, is just a long tube. And now what we're gonna do is we gotta finish off our ends, and we're gonna use a crochet hook for this part. I just have, this is a size 5mm crochet hook. The machine actually comes with a crochet hook too if you kept the one that came with your machine. So you could use that too. You just need one about this size for worsted weight or medium weight yarn. So now before we start doing our ends up here, we got to find, this is our tail here, this green tail. That's what we're going to be working towards. And we want that to be on the opposite end that we're starting on. So we're going to fold our tube so that that is right on the end, and then we're going to find where our starting stitch will be down here. That's the exact opposite. So I believe that is this one right here. And you just fold it and make sure that your tail is all the way on this edge. And we're folding it evenly in half just to find where we're starting here. So yeah, it's going to be this loop right here. So you're going to take your hook, you're going to insert it right under that green loop. Since our waste yarn is a contrasting color, it makes it really easy to see the loops that we have to work under. We're going to be working with all these loops, these green ones that are that have the pink in between. So I put my hook under this first loop, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this loop just to the left of it. I'm just going to go under that loop, just the green one, and then I'm going to bring it through the first loop like that, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn my work this way, and I'm going to go under the one to the right the same way. So I'm just going to go under that green loop, and then I'm going to pull it through the one that's already on my hook, like that. And then I'm going to go back on the left side and do the same thing again with the next one. So under that green loop, and pull it through. And then we're going to go back on the right side and go under this green loop, but just the green one, not the pink one. And we're going to pull it through. And then you're just going to keep doing that down the row. Just make sure you don't skip any. It will cause your work to come undone, which you don't want. So there we go. And then back to the right, under the next loop, pull it through. The left side, go under and pull it through. And then the right side, go under and pull it through. Just continue that all the way down, and then I'll show you what to do when you get to the end. So I'm getting close to the end here, and I just wanted to show you, I'm going to undo my little half knot that I did with my waste yarn and my main yarn just real quick before I get over here. And then once you get all the way through all of the loops, you're just going to take the tail, the green tail, or whatever your color is, and you're going to bring it through the last loop, and that will finish off that side. And now all we have to do is remove the waste yarn. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and do the other end the same exact way. So let me check real quick here. I want to make sure my tube is straight and we end up, it doesn't end up twisted. So I'm going to flatten it out and then get it the same on the other side. There we go, that's about right. So now I'm going to do the same thing over here on this side to make sure again that your tail is all the way on this end, and then just fold it evenly in half, and then that will be the one that's all the way on the opposite will be your starting loop. So right here, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing again. Alright, so now we got both ends finished up. I did exactly the same thing on this side as I did on this side. So now we just got to remove this waste yarn. So on this side it'll be really easy. One side's easy and one side's just a little trickier, but not too much trickier. So on this side you're just going to pull, and it's going to come, you pull the top string and it's just going to come right off, which is very nice. So then you're just left with your nice finished edge. So we're going to do the same thing on this side, but on this side we have to first get this first row, we have to pull it out because it's not going to want to unravel nicely like the other side did, but it's not a big deal. You're just going to pull it, this first row, you're going to pull it through. So you just kind of find that yarn that's attached to this end and pull it through. And you just have to do this for the first row, and then it gets easy. There we go. And now, just like on the other side, you can just pull and it'll go ahead and unravel the rest of the way. So now we have a rectangle. I don't know that my tails are long enough to sew it up with, so I'm probably just going to use a separate piece of yarn. If you left a really long tail, you could sew it up with that. But what you're going to do is take your two ends, we're just going to fold them into like a C shape and a reverse C shape, and then we're going to open up the left guy's mouth, and we're going to open up the right guy's mouth and put this bottom jaw inside the left guy's mouth. Does that make sense? That sounds weird. I don't know. So you just make like a C with that part in the middle, and then you layer this on top like that, and you just have this little sandwich. I'm just going to get another piece of the same yarn and thread it onto my yarn needle. And now we just got to sew through our little sandwich here. So let me make sure everybody is straight and where I want them. There we go. I think that looks good. So I'm going to just go up on this edge, and we're going to make sure we stay like along the, just under the stitches on the edge. You don't want to go like way down here. I'm going to stay close to the edge, and I'm just going to make sure I leave enough of a tail that it's good for tying knots and stuff at the end. And then I'm going to go a little bit further over and down, and I'm going to go through all 4 layers this time. And just make sure you're staying close to the edge. Pull it through. There we go. And then we're just going to keep doing that. We're going to go back and forth. And I'm getting close to the end of this middle one here in the middle. So I'm just going to go through, I think this will be the last time I go through that one. And then I'm just going to finish it off and make sure I'm right here in the corner. I got 2 more stitches to do. There we go, so we made it all the way across. And at this point, I'm just gonna hold the starting yarn tail. And I'm gonna pull this side and kind of pull on this side, pulling them both a little just to make sure everything is fairly tight. We just need to tie off our yarn here. I'm gonna cut mine down. I cut way longer of a piece than I needed, but I'm gonna tie a knot with this end. I'm just gonna go under the loop, and then I'm just gonna go through that loop. And then I'm going to go through again and do the same thing again. So just pull it till there's a loop, and then I'm going to bring my yarn through that loop and tighten it. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we're going to weave these tails in just to make sure everything's good and secure. Because there's 2 tails, I'm going to just tie them in a knot because it's easier. And then both tails are secured, so that's good. The good thing though is that this is double thickness, so we can weave all the tails into the inside and not have to deal with them anymore. So it's not really hard to weave the tails in. So I'm going to just put this yarn on my hook, and I'm going to pull the 2 layers apart kind of, and then just go right down next to where it's already knotted. And you just want to make sure you're not coming out anywhere until you go through a little bit, and then you want it to come out like just down a ways. Like that. Pull it through, and then just pull it, and then there's that one. Make sure it's not coming out anywhere. And then we're going to do the same thing with the rest of these. So just gotta weave the tails into the center of our headband. Actually, I'm probably going to do both of these at the same time. All right, there we go. I got them all through. So now I'm just going to give them a little pull and then cut them, and they'll just disappear into the middle of our headband. All right, so now the moment of truth. We're going to flip it around and ta-da! We got our twisted headband. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please leave a like, be sure to comment, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.